as well, in case you have not attended GetSetup classes before. I know we had a few new people signed up. Who is new? Anybody? You can raise your hand or wave or something. We have a couple of people that are ambassadors that have been on classes quite a long time. We have some people. I usually teach technology topics, so I'm seeing people that I don't always see before on this topic here. Okay, we'll give people another minute or two to get started. While we're waiting, thank you all for muting your microphones. You just really are great at Zoom etiquette. I have to compliment this group. They're just fantastic. I appreciate that because these microphones pick up a lot of sound in the background. So it's really good that you all do that and you've learned Zoom etiquette so well. Hi, Christine. I see some familiar faces. Yeah. And how are you? I'm just curious before we get started if there's any specific places people are thinking they'd like to move to. Go ahead, Christine. You got your hand up.
Italy, probably Tuscany, and anything. I want sunshine. I want to live in sunshine in Italy.
Oh, okay. Well, parts of Italy do get cold, you know.
Right. That's why I want the southern part.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Anybody else have any place there? I
I'm
mean,
looking at Mexico.
who is that, Margaret?
Margaret, Oaxaca primarily.
Okay, all right. Mexico, actually, we don't actually keep track of how many US citizens live abroad in other countries. There's no database for that, but it's estimated that about 2 million people, Americans, actually live in Mexico.
Wow.
It's the #1 country for Americans to live in.
Yeah.
Bob, do you
Yeah.
know the State Department keeps track of Americans that are living in other countries at all?
No, they don't. They don't.
Huh?
It's a voluntary registration if you want to register, but it's not required. Hi, Robbie. I see you have your hand raised. Thank you for knowing how to use that. That's great.
Well, now I don't know how to turn it off.
I could turn it off for
Okay.
you. It's okay. It goes after a while. Thank you.
I chose this class because my husband retired very early. He was 57 and tired of the corporate world. And we went down to Costa Rica for 3 weeks. And we stayed 3 months and then we stayed 3 years. And while we were down there, we traveled. You had to leave the country every 90 days.
Right. To renew your passport. Right.
Yes. And Panama, I mean, there's so many places down there and I want to do it again, not necessarily maybe live there. It's not a life of luxury, but it's not a life of camping either. So I'm just looking for some other wonderful places.
Oh, great. Well, you're probably one of the more experienced people. That's great. You're with us and can maybe share a few things as we go through some of the material and stuff. Thank you. Let me get Laura's. Laura's got her hand raised, and then Hiroko. We'll get to you. Okay.
Laura
Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah. I have been to Italy probably 7-8 times, and I want to go for 90 days. And then I want to come back to the States for probably 6 months or so. And I want 90 days in Greece because I like the Greek islands. So that's kind of, I don't think I want to move entirely for a lot of various reasons. I might change my mind, but I'm looking at the 90-day, 3-month permission lifestyle.
Great. Great.
So that's my hope.
Okay. That, the great thing about it is that when you can make choices, you kind of have to think about what are you going to do with all this time when you're away from your home routine and everything. Hiroko, you had your hand up.
I having gone through this lockdown in New York City, and bearing in mind the cost of living in New York City is tremendous, and so I am thinking of moving out, but I have great many number of children, so I have a choice of either going to Tokyo or Vienna or Munich, Vienna or Germany.
Oh, okay. Those places may not be much less expensive than New York, but if you know people there and you have a place to stay,
Let's say my children, I have six sons, all around.
All
And
right.
I'm proficient in those languages, and I lived in Germany as most of my adult life. And then these medical expenses in New York, I carry all those Medicare and Medicare supplement, etc., etc. But the coverage is not to my
Medical
satisfaction.
costs are really expensive in the United States compared to other countries. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'll share a website that'll actually give you a lot of cost of living comparisons, city by city. So no matter where you want to go, and we'll take a look at some of the popular places. But there's other places that people may want to go that aren't on the popular list. And we'll take a look at why they might not be, but also I'll give you some information you can go and look at to check it out. So let me go ahead and get started a little bit with a little bit introduction, and I'll stop for questions. I'll be watching the gallery. If you know how to use the Zoom window on the bottom, if you start at the microphone on the left and you scroll over with your mouse to the right, you'll see this thing called reactions, this button called reactions. And if you click on reactions, it'll raise your hand and that'll get my attention. I'll watch chat, but sometimes I lose track of things. I apologize for that, but I will catch up with you. So please wave or raise your hand or something like that. Okay, if you have a question. So I'm going to share a few slides here as we get started. This is kind of a general idea of is it right for you? We're not going to cover everything possible. I just want to give you some of the things that help me decide whether it was right for me or not, and other friends and family members that I've looked at and talked to and have associations with. And so we'll take a look at that. We are educators at GetSetup, and we do training online. Thank you for joining us. For those of you that have taken classes from us before, just so you know, we're going to mention some products and websites and things. We don't receive any money from them or any compensation. They're just part of our training that we do. We're recording the sessions. You can request a link at help@getsetup.io. You'll get an email after the session from that link. I am watching chat, so I see people are commenting in chat. Thank you for sharing all your ideas, and sometimes people get some great ideas from these. And thank you again for muting your microphone. Okay, so the objectives, pros and cons, why there are some good destinations, some essentials, and some planning and preparation. It's different for everybody, but it's nice to be able to think about it as a choice. Happened to me because I got married. Well, I met my wife when I was in college at 19, and we stayed together for 43 years. And she passed away suddenly about 7 years ago. And after about a year, I realized I can make decisions by myself again. It took a while to figure that out. And then I realized that I could live in a lot of different places. I wasn't actually tied to, living when I got ready to retire. I thought about that. So I read this article on one of the international travel sites about here's, 8 places in the world you can live on $200,000 in the bank. And I said, well, let me go check them out. So I decided to go travel and tour that. And I also have a son that runs a business. He actually owns a company with 45 employees. It's based out of Malta, and he's based in Barcelona. And he and his wife and my granddaughter live there. They live there. So it's been very educational with him living abroad for such a lengthy period of time too. The pros, you can improve your standard of living. But it depends on where you go. Some people look at cost. Some people, depending on your budget, it really determines whether that's going to be a factor or not, because some places are more expensive than the United States, and there's less expensive places in the United States too. Maybe you want a better climate. If you are in snowbound climate, like, Michigan or Chicago, or right now Texas is getting a little erratic. Maybe you want a more consistent climate. We'll talk about places that are good climate considerations. Somebody mentioned retiring early, right? You maybe by reducing your expenses and healthcare costs, you can retire early. Some people just like the idea of a foreign culture and the lifestyle. Some people do it for adventure. Some people do it for new friends, and some people do it for just a lifestyle choice. So there's lots of different reasons why it's something people think about doing, and they do end up living abroad. Some downsides to it that, in the websites that talk about international living, they never talk about the bad things about living abroad. Everybody's happy, they're enjoying their life, everything's wonderful, and they're so glad they did it. They wish they had done it earlier. Affordability depends on your location. So when you're looking at a affordability, it can be a factor that maybe it is different based on your location. You might be further away from family and friends, okay? And so social circles, as we've discovered in the time of COVID, are really important. And being away from people, it might be okay for some people, some people may find it really frustrating. It's your own personal choice to think about. Traveling to the US can take a long time from certain parts of the world. And so you want to think about, well, what if I have some responsibilities that I have to take care of? What about an emergency trip? If you do work overseas and you don't have a US based job, or you might have lower wages for your employment. Not always, but you might. Language barriers can get in the way. That first 30 days, from everybody I've talked to, my own experience, those first 30 days are the toughest, because you're new, you don't know your way around, you're trying to figure things out, and that's tough. Then there's some paperwork. If you only want to stay someplace 90 days, you can stay usually with just your passport. If you want to stay longer than 90 days, in one location, you will probably have to get a visa. And in Europe, they have this thing called the Schengen zone, that if you travel to any country in that zone, which is most European Union countries, you can only stay 90 days in the zone, and then you have to travel out and come back. But there's ways to get visas and help. And then as you get a little bit older, if you need a little bit of assisted living, there's not as many options. There's some things that are starting, but there's not quite as many as you would hope to find. Okay, so those are some pros and cons to think about. Oh, great. Oh, Sarah said there's a Schengen calculator if you're wanting to stay in Europe for an extended time. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, we
I
were
have
going to be in Europe for a year when COVID hit. In fact, we were in Spain when it hit.
Oh,
And
wow.
we did the Schengen calculator because it's very confusing.
It
And,
is. It is.
and it's not the same as EU. It's not
No.
the same. You just have to know which countries are Schengen and which ones are not, and then use the calculator.
Yes, that it's a term that it like you say, you might think of it as European Union, but that's not how passports and visas are controlled in a lot of European areas. Yeah. Okay, so these are the bullets of what makes a good oh yeah, Susie, if you happen to have the link, but it is spelled Schengen. That's how Schengen is spelled in chat. And there's, I probably, if you just did a Google search, that might help. Okay, housing, climate, healthcare, visa, cost of living, stability, infrastructure, lifestyle, expat community, and banking. The sites International Living and Live and retire abroad come up with lists based on these characteristics. And they make sense because these are things that you would want to have no matter where you lived, right? So why, go to an area that's less safe? Why go to an area that isn't as friendly? And they come up with these lists. International Living's 2021 list is Costa Rica, number 1, Panama, Mexico, Colombia, Portugal, Ecuador, Malaysia, France, Malta, and Vietnam. And I'm surprised Malta can be pretty expensive. My son's business headquarters and his business partner live in Malta. And Malta can be a little bit expensive, but it's a really nice area to live in. You can get to anywhere in Europe, and so it's easy to travel to. Live and Invest Overseas gives you a list of cities that they have in different countries, and a lot of the ones that are in bold here are ones that show up on multiple lists. Now, the reason these are on the list is because they're friendly to Americans typically, and other Europeans that want to go travel there, and they give people the ability to go there and stay for longer, and they make things really friendly, for people that want to stay there a little bit extended period of time. So they're a little bit easier to go to.
Bob,
Yeah.
but this isn't taking into account the COVID factor right now with people are
No.
being unable to go to other countries. And I'm guessing there aren't any countries that are allowing Americans to travel to yet, correct?
You can travel to Mexico. You can travel to a lot of Latin America, but you can't travel too much to Europe right now. Okay, and some countries in Asia, they're very, green or red, depending on their particular situation. But Europe's pretty much difficult to travel to right now. But Latin America and South America are and Central America are all pretty available for if you want to travel there. Okay, let's take a look at some websites. Let me change my sharing here to something different. Okay. And I've got a couple of sites here that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so oops, let me change that, fix that, and get this where I can see it. Okay, so International Living, you all should be seeing my browser. Okay, and you're going to get an email that will have the links to these websites in them as well. And of course, just like you probably, to answer your question, they have an article, where can US citizens travel right now? It's tough, but eventually, hopefully this will come to an end. But they list countries that they have that are on their most popular list, and they list a lot of other countries too. They have a lot of other places like Greece and Italy and other things like that. And so they have a lot of good articles. They're probably the biggest publication out there that I'm aware of for living abroad. And they have profiles about countries and things like that. And considering you're making a big move, their subscription cost is probably a reasonable expense to look at. But you can get country reports from them on everything. But they have links to resources that they have a relationship with. Keep in mind sometimes that when they run these conferences, they do charge a fee for the conferences, and sometimes they'll have real estate available or other people available. Well, they're not running conferences now, but they might have real property listings that they have affiliate links with, where they get a percentage of the sale for referring people. But it's not anything improper. It's just that they might encourage you to do that. The next one is Live and Invest Overseas. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe Live and Invest Overseas and International Living are now connected to each other in some way because their website logos look very similar, but I'm not sure. And they still have a lot of similar information here along the top here. They'll have budgets, they'll say super cheap. Okay, so super cheap is, what do they consider that? Cuenca, Ecuador, less than $1,000 a month. Chiang Mai, Thailand, the Philippines, Las Tablas, Panama, Grenada, Nicaragua. I wouldn't go to Nicaragua right now. I don't know why they put these on the lists. Luxury on a budget, Paris, Panama City Beach area, and I was at Panama City Beach area. It's not inexpensive. It's expensive, but affordable. Abruzzo, Italy, Barcelona, in this areas around Barcelona, Puerto Vallarta. So they have a couple of things. Each one's pretty good, and so they're good research tools. So I'd recommend you check them out. Okay. Security. The U.S. Department of State issues country advisories for every country in the world that they give advisories on for what you should expect when you go traveling. I used to work for a company that provided personal security and international protection, and it was great. There weren't that many countries that were so risky that you wanted to send a private security person in there with somebody, but certain things, like, you just have to use common sense. I grew up in Chicago, and I knew not to walk on a dark street at night, type of thing. And so some people that have problems do things like that. They forget that their home neighborhood might be perfectly safe, but they're in a different area of the world. So they give reports on cities. They have links to other countries, embassies and websites where you can look at visa information and other things like that. And you can actually register with the Department of State and let them know you're living abroad. So that's another factor. Okay, so another really good tool is when you're looking at expenses. This website called Expantistan will actually give you a cost of living index for everywhere in the world. It's supported by individuals, and they sell these services to businesses. American businesses and global businesses operate all around the world. When I was living in Atlanta for a while, I met a lot of German nationals, because Mercedes-Benz and Porsche and a lot of German companies had their US headquarters based out of the Atlanta area. And so Mercedes-Benz and Porsche have to support their employees when they work in the United States and in China and in Latin America and other places around the world. US companies have to do that too. So this whole way of living abroad has been pioneered by international corporations, and they have to provide all these services to people, healthcare, other things like that. So there's a whole industry that individuals can take advantage of. But they have, this actually has a little index. You can see the red areas like Oslo. I've been there, really expensive. Okay, Oslo is considered expensive by Swedes, and Sweden's expensive. But if you go to someplace like, Guayaquil, they give you a cost of living index 85. Someplace like Denver, 175. And they give you this whole area where you can get comparisons and rankings and countries. So if you have a specific area that you're trying to learn about, they have a complete list. They just have all kinds of cities that you can look at all over the world and check what the costs of things are, no matter where you want to go. So if you were looking at Brazil, Italy, this is just a huge list of things that we can look at. So if you're looking at Germany, you might find some things in Germany a little more expensive. Okay, we can change this to dollars. Okay, it looks like we've got to go all the way down here to US dollars. Yes. Okay. And you can see A basic lunchtime menu in the business district is $15. A combo meal like a Big Mac is $9. Actually, Big Macs aren't that different all over the world. Their costs are actually pretty similar. But you can look for those. And so if we wanted to compare it to, say, Medellin, Colombia, by city, and if I wanted to look at Medellin, it'll have a different ratio. So I can show its cost of living, and we can look at things. This is in Colombian pesos. Again, I'm going to go down to US dollars really fast. I apologize. But we can look at this in US dollars, and basic lunchtime menu is $5.45. Okay. So a combo meal, $4.69. And you can look at housing. Monthly rent for 900 square feet furnished, $698. Okay. And then if you in an average area, and that's in an expensive area, that's in El Poblado. I know that Colombia, whereas a monthly rent for an average area is like 363. So you'll find different pricing on everything, and you'll find cleaning help, hourly rate for cleaning help, $2.62 an hour, right? And so the cost structure is different. Obviously, the more you can speak the language, the better off you'll be. But this is a great site just to give you some ideas, and just the indexes alone. But if you want to get an idea of what it's going to cost, they say it's it's one of the Medellin is cheaper than 88% of the cities in the world, which is one reason why it's a popular expat destination.
Bob, how accurate is this website in your experience?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yes, how accurate is the website?
It's reasonably accurate. I mean, I found that the people that supply this information are just people like you and me. And so they participate in it, and they will tell you if the information is not really that accurate because they don't have enough people supporting it. But I've seen these prices pretty consistent, and the index really helps a lot, because the index will give you, the rankings that'll help you more understand relative costs of living. So here's like New York. We have somebody from New York. It's number 6 in terms of its price index of cities in the world. Okay, so if you were thinking of going from New York and you said, well, let me go to San Francisco, it ought to be less expensive. It's 224. But if you start to go down here and you look at maybe Miami, one reason why Florida is popular for people, or if you start looking at Frankfurt, or you start looking at Lyon in France, or Cork in Ireland, you can get an idea. But Cork in Ireland is a little more expensive than Philadelphia. So here's Baltimore, Maryland. So some of these cities, and the indexes are really, really good comparisons, but housing, meals, transportation and utilities are a lot of them, the costs, and they're pretty comparable for pretty good at giving you an index. And then you get down towards the hundreds and you start to see why a lot of things like Panama City and other places that are on the top 10 list. Quito, Ecuador, really popular destination. So they were not, obviously they're not a guarantee, but they're really, really very good for comparisons. There's another one that'll be in the link as well in the handout. But it's a great way to say, well, gee, I want to retire here. Is it going to be about the same? Is it going to be comparable? Is it going to be more or less expensive? And start your calculating there. One thing to keep in mind when you move money from dollars to a local currency is that you do have to send it through a currency exchange. PayPal, which some of you may use, has a service called Zoom with an X. Okay, and it is one of the lowest cost money transfer services in the world. And you can use your, you can send money abroad with Zoom using your PayPal account. You can send cash to pick it up at like a Western Union or a bank with ID and a code they give you. You can deposit money to a bank account if you have to pay rent or other things. You can pay bills. You can do all things. It's a great service. I used it a lot, but I also use my ATM card for cash. And I also found that Charles Schwab will give, when you have a bank account with Charles Schwab, they don't charge you a currency exchange fee when you use your card overseas. So check with your bank, because that currency exchange will eat up, a few percent of things from you. Okay, health insurance. Health insurance around the world, great quality healthcare is available everywhere, but cities are a little better than country locations. I use GeoBlue. You don't have to have Blue Shield. GeoBlue is an independent company, but they're a supplement. And I think for my last bill was $280, and I'm 69 years old. It's $280 to get a supplemental international policy that covered me for up to 180 days of overseas, living. You can get, if you're going to live in a place like, say, Italy or Ireland or Germany or wherever, Latin America, you can get a policy that there. Oh, Susie, hey, got the Schwab account. Great. They're great. I mean, that ATM card, the free, without the currency transfer fee is great. But there's a couple of others. I'll show you some slides in a few minutes that have a couple of others. But you can get international health insurance from GeoBlue full-time if you want it, Cigna, Aetna, because like I say, they provide these services for corporations as well. And so you can get 24-hour support, you can get telehealth, you can get English-speaking physicians, it helps scheduling appointments, emergency care, even evacuation if you need it. So I'm going to stop sharing, see my gallery for a while and pause for a few questions. I'm going to show you a few slides about budgets and other things like that I've researched too. Any questions so far? Any information?
Bob, this is all great information. I'm really curious to learn more about the insurance you just showed. Are you going to be sending links in your?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great, because, travel insurance is so expensive, and the real reason most people want it is for medical.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we have life insurance sometimes, but you're right, the medical insurance is great, and then, and like I say, they're very reasonable, because healthcare costs are different around the world. And so they base your insurance rate based on obviously your age and your existing conditions, but also what treatment's going to cost for you. And lots of times you get healthcare from a pharmacist, and you can, and a lot of prescription drugs don't require, in the US, don't require prescriptions overseas. So let me go, any other questions? I'm going to go back to a few slides and share a few things. Yeah, Laura.
I just have a question, not about the actual living idea, but the travel idea of the lesser, maybe 6 months even. I love the GeoBlue, so thank you. That's a great tip. But I have medical insurance probably for life. I'm with the University of Michigan, and unless something changes, I typically hope that I can use my insurance when I'm abroad. And I haven't had to, but as I'm 64, so it's coming, where there's probably going to be something. Do you know much about being able to commingle your own insurance with insurances in other countries?
What I would suggest is regardless of what insurance you have, I mean, Medicare by itself stops at the border. So Medicare
Okay,
is,
good to know, good to know.
Medicare is not effective at all outside of the United States or the US territory. So it is not insurance, okay, outside of the US. But if you have a Medicare Advantage or a Medigap plan, which is a very common, thing that people do, those plans often have travel coverage while you're on vacation, but everybody's different and they might consider a vacation 2 weeks, they might consider it 3 months, whatever.
Wow.
You have to call them and find out what is my coverage. I'm thinking of taking a trip to Europe or Mexico or whatever. What's my medical coverage benefit going to be if I travel? And they usually will have an international number on your card
Mhm.
for that if they do. And then you can still get the Geo Blue is a good inexpensive supplement that basically gives you extra coverage. But if you want to live somebody where for longer than about 6 months, you're usually going to have some additional coverage local that you can get, but you can buy it from an American company, Cigna Global, Aetna, Geo Blue, and it'll be effective over there.
Perfect, thank you.
Bob, have you ever filed a claim on that Geo Blue?
I've never filed a claim. I've taken advantage of it, but I've never had to file a claim. I guess, well, I've used it, so it's something that I guess that's kind of the equivalent of a claim. But yeah, it was really easy to use.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because you never know how good it is until you have to use it.
Yeah, exactly. But they were great. They helped me find an English speaking doctor, and other things were really helpful. Angela, you had your hand up?
Yes, I do. I have a question that is a little different. If you want to kind of experiment and be abroad for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever it is, do you have any suggestions about what to do with your affairs in the US other than having a friend, checking on your house and stuff like that?
It really, obviously, if you're going to leave your house for 3 months, it's good to have somebody watching it for you, right? But one of the great benefits we have for traveling abroad is we have another type of vacationer or traveler that uses recreational vehicles. And the whole recreational vehicle type of lifestyle has helped create services like mail centers. You can just do a web search and you can find mail centers, and that will, you change your mail so it doesn't come to your home, it goes to a mail center. They scan it and send you an email of everything that comes in, and then you tell them what you want them to open. Banking is pretty much digital all over the world, but you get a bank account with a bank that probably has more international locations, like HSBC or other people like that.
Mhm.
So it takes a little preparation. Sometimes it's, people move in. I moved into a 55 and over community that has security, and I can, I can just let them know and I can walk out the door, and they'll keep an eye on the place for me. So it's different with every situation, but the more, you have, and also you want to figure, okay, what's going to be ready for you when you get back.
Mhm.
Bob, we did one of those global mailboxes, and I would highly recommend that. In fact, when we got back to the US, we said, we're just going to keep it because it's
Yeah.
very inexpensive and it makes your life a lot easier. And plus, the other recommendation I would make is put as much of your mail online as you possibly can. Your banking, your credit, everything, put it online. Try and get as little mail as possible.
Yeah, you can really cut it down. So it's just the ads. There's ways to get off of the promotional mail, but I don't remember them. Gloria, I see you have your hand up. Let me get you, and then I'll get Christine.
Just 2 quick questions. Do you know the amount of cash that you can take from the United States into another country? Say you're just going for 90 days.
It When you're coming across the border, usually it's about, the limit's about 10,000 US, but not always. It's changed because of drug trafficking laws. But you can pull money out from your ATM every day.
Right.
if you want to. You know, that's never a problem.
Okay, and then the other question, you might be going to cover this. Are you going to talk about websites where you're, how to find a place like for 90 days? Where to
Well,
go?
it's Airbnb and Verbo are a great place, but I'll give you some hints on housing. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Christine, you had a question?
No, I have just some suggestions from traveling, and just to be sure, you've contacted your bank, all your credit cards, you've told your credit card companies that you, wherever you're going to be, even if you're
Yes.
traveling in the US. I
Yeah.
actually had a problem using a card in my own state because I was out of the city. It was crazy. So you have to notify them, your insurance company, all your questions. Also, I would go directly to whoever you pay money to, who's covering you.
Bills, right, right.
Exactly. So you just go through everything, all your affairs, and make sure that anyone that's getting money from you, who's providing you with services, knows where you are. And hopefully, if you're leaving your house, you have a reliable person that you're trusting. So Bob, have you found any good check sheets on your research that people can use to know if they're going to be gone for a certain, especially extended time? These are some things.
No, you know, I have, well, why, maybe I haven't looked, but I know, because people aren't traveling a lot right now, but I think, I've seen some sites that say, here's what to do if you're going to be preparing to travel abroad for a lengthier period of time. But you're right, automating bill payments, you know, making sure I mean, I don't tell every credit card company where I'm going to be. I just tell the ones I'm going to use. And I have like, you know, my primary and a backup. But my mail, you know, I have a mail center and I use that, but most everything of my utilities are automated, they're online, and anything you can get online, you want to have online as much as possible.
The other thing about credit cards I learned in Paris is that you want to make sure that the card you're using is in alignment with a bank in the country or the city you're in, because some will charge you fees just for using their ATMs, others
Yes.
won't. So you want to make sure you understand whatever card you're using, which banks are in alignment in the city you're in or the country you're in, so you won't be charged the fees as much.
Right, those transfer fees can clobber you. Yeah. Let me share a few slides. I've shown you the websites that cover a lot of the material. Department of State, you know, that's how you make sure. That's why these countries make lists. You don't want to go somewhere that's going through a political disruption. You know, crime is pretty much lower in a lot of other places around the world. And keep in mind the legal system. You're not a citizen of the local country when it comes to property and contracts and things like that. It will help. Healthcare, you know, you're going to get these links in the email. This is a hospital lobby of one I used in, I can't remember where it was. I think it was in Thailand, or it might have been in Mexico, but it's really good. The cities, the more rural you are, the more you've got to worry about transportation, you know, to a modern medical facility. But in all the major cities around the world, it's great. Finances, you know, I mentioned Expatistan and Zoom. You know, these are going to be your major expenses. And there's a great site I mentioned, Tangerine Travels. I'm going to include the link to that in the email. And they're, like, say, a young couple, but there's also some other websites. Everybody's different, though. I mean, if it's you and you're at a point in your life where you've got income coming in from the US, it's going to be different than if you have to find a way to support yourself from your YouTube channel while you're living abroad. keep in mind, entertainment and lifestyle choices are going to be different. If you think, I want to be in Barcelona, and when I was in Barcelona living there for a while with my son, I was able to take quick jaunts to Rome and Paris and even London. I could just wait to watch for airfares to drop. And when there was a good time to go, I could go there. This is a sample budget I found from a couple that was living in Ecuador. And it's about a year old, so it's not that old. But what you'll find are things like utilities are really inexpensive compared to the United States. Do you imagine $10 a month for electricity these days? You know, I mean, first of all, you don't need a lot of heat because in Cuenca, Ecuador, the temperature starts out at 61 degrees in the morning every day of the year, and it goes up to about 84 degrees for the high every day of the year. It's equatorial, so it's even. And the reason people like living in places like Cuenca and Medellin when they're tropical is that if you're at the sea level in a tropical climate, it's really humid. And so in Panama City, it's really humid, really frustrating. So people in Costa Rica and Panama, they like going up the hills and the mountains to those places. If you look at the weather in Barcelona, it's usually a little bit chillier than it is in Southern California, but no warmer. And my son and I rented a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, a half a block from the beach for $850 a month. And we were able to buy, there were little grocery stores and markets around, and we could walk everywhere. Okay, because it's a walk. Most people in the world don't have cars like we do in the United States. And so, but you can find a lot of walkable communities around there.
Bob, how long ago was that you rented the apartment for $850?
That was 2 years ago. 2 years ago. After he got married and kicked me out, you know, was when I came back to the US, but he has a 2,500 square foot home in a gated community where they have a private school for their daughter, for my granddaughter, and that's $1,800 a month in rent. And they've got a spare bedroom for me whenever I go there, which helps me out a lot. I took a bus in Costa Rica for 25 cents, you know, so I was the only gringo on the bus. But didn't bother me, you know, and and one of the things I did when I went to other countries that I signed up for a language school. Language schools are really helpful in getting you acclimated to the local area. You have some place to go every day. They'll help you with getting local housing. I ran across, when I was in Thailand, there was a Canadian woman. I helped her share a taxi into town, and we split the cost, and she was going for a 3-week cooking school in Thailand. So there's a lot of things like that will help you. Make sure you update your passport. If you're going to stay someplace longer than 90 days, is when you want to do a little research on traveling abroad and what you need for a local country residency permit.
Bob, I wanted to suggest for people who are staying for an extended time in a country, a lot of cities are looking for Americans to teach English. So
Yeah.
that would be something, if you want to work or volunteer in a country, that may be something you can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits. You can still join the Peace Corps, which is a 2-year assignment. They don't have an age limit either on Peace Corps. And I have a friend that was teaching in China when COVID hit. She actually stayed on, and she teaches English as a foreign language. You don't have to know the foreign language. It's about a 4-week certification. This is where I lived in Medellin. You know, about it looks like a, you know, suburban neighborhood, but I could walk to the town square. And so it's more a matter of what are you used to. If you haven't lived in an apartment and you've lived in a house, how are you going to, you know, remember you're changing your housing you're changing your locale, you're changing where you do shopping. You know, all of these things are big changes. Do you want to be by the beach? Do you want to be by the city? Do you want to be in the mountains? I recommend renting. What I did was I had a 3-trip program that I planned whenever I went somewhere. I'd go up and stay at a hotel first. The reason is I didn't know the area. I didn't know the languages. I didn't know what's around. And I used the hotel staff to help me. I'd say, hey, I'm thinking of living here. You know, what are some good neighborhoods? I had done the research on international living. I said, they said, oh, I got a buddy or a friend who can help show you, you know, around neighbor if you want. And that's one way to get acclimated to a community. So you can go around a neighborhood. Every time I went somewhere, I would walk around, I'd find real estate offices. They're just like in the US. And so you'd walk around, go find a realtor. A lot of them speak English. And they're because they have a lot of foreign investors that buy property for rental and Airbnb and things like that. And you can get an idea of what longer term rentals run. You can go to Airbnb and Vrbo and other places too. And I would stay someplace like that for a second, to try living in the community for a couple of weeks, see if what's nearby you for what you want is available, take a language class, get to know, you know, because the advantage of a language class is that you're dealing with somebody who lives locally and works locally, but you also have a little bit friendlier support. They know you're just not the average tourist. If you're thinking about living there, they will share more in the conversations you have with them, I found. And keep in mind, you know, what do you want to have nearby you? You know, if you want to go to the opera, it's great. But is the opera going to be in Italian or Spanish or German? You got to pick the right language, and the scroll bar on the screen may not be in English. It probably will be in the local language. But you can find movies in English almost everywhere. There's a lot of theaters that have English, and I also found a lot of people in local. If I would go to a restaurant 3 times, they considered me a regular. Coffee shop or restaurant, and I could strike up conversations with some of the help there and the staff. They were really happy to practice their English because they don't get a chance to practice it with a native English speaker that much. Sometimes you can take a tour. There's a company that I have a friend with, but you can use others, the international living sites, taking trips. Facebook is a great place to find expat communities. Just do a search on Facebook and say expats in Germany, expats in Tokyo, expats in Medellin, expats in Cuenca, and you may find an expat community, and they get together. There's always some bar or restaurant that expats hang out at in the local community. The hotel can help you find them. Okay, and that's why I say hotel first is a good way to go. Language class, in a longer stay, a couple of weeks, later, and then you get an idea of how you do being away from home for a longer period of time. Some people are great at it. I mean, some people are willing to. I have a friend that is a true digital nomad now. He doesn't have a lease on an apartment. He doesn't own a house in the US, and he's staying with a few family members right now, but he's been traveling by road all around the US on his own. If he could travel abroad, but he would, because his company lets him work with a cell phone and a Wi-Fi connection. And so he's somebody that could work anywhere, and he'll get paid in American dollars in his US bank account, and he just has to make withdrawals, from that. You are going to pay taxes in the US, by the way. If you get Social Security, it'll get direct deposited to your US bank account. And any income you make, unless you live like the expat requirement on the income tax side is so severe that you really have to be a full-time resident abroad to live somewhere. Okay. Bobby, you have your hand up.
What you're saying is really true. I would never go anywhere and stay more than 3 weeks, a 3-week commitment to one place, because you just can't get the feel of it. And then they make the pictures look wonderful and you get there and it's nothing like the pictures. And there's so many places. And the biggest thing you have to remember when you're going to these countries is we are a guest in their country. So like Costa Rica is so slow paced.
Yes.
You think you want something fixed yesterday, it probably won't get fixed for 2 weeks. So if your internet's out and your phone doesn't work, don't get all beside yourself, because nobody else is going to get besides themselves.
Boy, I
You're
remember. Yeah, yeah.
You just go with the flow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a different pace of life, and particularly in Latin American countries, the idea of getting something done at a particular time or date it's an estimate. It's a suggestion, type of thing. And also dinner times. I mean, like the siesta and the afternoon hours are things, stores close down. Not so much anymore, but there's still a lot of places. Like if you need to get, a flashlight and you wanted to go to the hardware store. I remember in Sitges, my son and I would look, oh, it's 3 p.m. They'll be closed until 5. They're taking that 2-hour break for the afternoon type of thing. And dinners are later too. So if you're used to eating dinners early, you can find places at tourist locations and things like that. But some people are really good about just jumping right in and going somewhere and saying, I'm there, and I'm going to stay. But that's why for me, my personal approach, I found a little better to take have a little network ready for me. And I found the language schools and cooking schools and things like that were really great resources. Okay, so lots of places to go, lots of things to do. I mean, when this COVID quarantine thing and lockdown is over, I can see we're all gonna say hello to each other on the road, aren't we? And find places to go. Yeah.
Bob,
Yeah, Christine.
what you just said about cooking schools, keep in mind what happened to Julia Child. Women were not chefs, especially in France. But
Yes.
she persevered, took training, and look what happened to her, because she took a cooking class while she was living in Paris.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, part of it is when you're living over there, when you go over there, it's one thing to be a tourist. I mean, I was in Rio de Janeiro and I think I spent like 2 days seeing the sites, the tourist locations. But I was there for 3 weeks, and the rest of the time I spent walking the neighborhoods, taking a taxi. But I learned from some local people, they said, don't take the bus. It's not safe, but it's okay to take the metro. So you find those things out in different areas of the world as you get around and do things. But you've got Uber and Lyft everywhere. I landed in Krakow, Poland one year when they were rebuilding the airport and the ATMs were down at the airport. Fortunately, I had Uber on my phone, and it'll charge your US credit card for you automatically. So these are some things, some pros and cons. You're going to get an email from info@GetSetup. This has been a really great active group. I love that we had so many suggestions, because nobody knows everything about living abroad. This is kind of like to get your blood pumping and your brain thinking, and now's the time to start planning, to go somewhere and thinking about it, I think, and talking to friends about it. And some people are going to say you're crazy, and you just got to ignore them, and find a way to do it. Find that mail center, make a list of your credit cards, find out who doesn't charge, exchange fees, do some research on Airbnb. The insurance companies will sell you insurance now, if you want to live abroad. But wait until you can travel someplace and get back. Some places you can travel to, right now, but that can't get back too easily because there's quarantine restrictions. So, but hopefully, with vaccines rolling out and other things, we'll be in better shape soon. And thank you for, if you get a chance, review the class. We appreciate it. I'm hoping that I can go see my granddaughter soon someday, and we'll hopefully see each other at another class. I know some of you have joined me on my tech classes, so I hope to see you again soon. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. All right. Take care and have a good time this weekend.
Thanks so
Stay
much for
warm.
giving us hope that we have a future.
Yes, we do. I know. Thank you, Christine.
This
for
is
joining
so
us.
hopeful.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And I
Thanks very
appreciate
much.
your sharing all your experiences. It's so helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Take care.